There are two lines on the map in front of me tonight. One is blue, one is red. They were drawn by two different pens in the summer of 1988, and they follow the same roads, the same highways, the same small towns, in the same order across 900 miles of American backcountry. Never more than a few hours apart, never once touching. For the first 3 days this object sat on my table, I believed I was looking at a pursuit, someone following someone. I have restored letters that were never sent and photographs that were never framed, but I had never held a chase in my hands before. I was wrong about the chase. What I was actually holding was the quietest act of devotion I have ever restored, and the person it was meant for went her whole life without knowing it existed. Stay with me until the last photograph, because when this map finally gives up its secret, you are going to think about your own road and about who might have walked it before you, in silence, clearing the way. I lay the object on the linen cloth. I put on the white gloves. I switch on the lamp. And for 1 long minute, I do nothing at all. I only look. What I am looking at is an atlas, a road atlas of the United States, 1986 edition, bound in leather that has been handled so many times the corners have gone soft as suede. The spine is broken. Water has been here once, a long time ago, and left its tide mark across the bottom edge like a coastline. My name is Lily Brooks. I restore the things people almost threw away. The small atelier where I do this work is called Vellum, and this week it smelled like old paper and prairie dust. Before I open the atlas, if stories like this one find something in you, I'd love for you to be part of this community. Subscribe and turn on the notifications so the next restoration finds its way to you. And if there is an object in your family that carries a story, a letter, a map, a photograph nobody can explain, you can tell me about it in the comments or write to me privately at vellumoflife@gmail.com. Your privacy is always protected. Names, places, every identifying detail can be changed. Every memory deserves dignity. Now, let me show you what arrived on Tuesday. The woman who brought the box was in her 40s, and she apologized twice before she reached my table. Once for the rain she carried in on her coat, once for the condition of what was inside the box.
My uncle passed 12 years ago. We're finally selling the house. Most of it was easy to let go of. This wasn't.
She lifted the atlas out and set it down the way you set down something sleeping.
His desk was locked. It was locked my whole childhood. We found the key taped under the bottom drawer, which is the first place anyone would look. I think he wanted it found eventually, just not while he was alive.
Inside the desk, there had been 3 things: the atlas, a slim field notebook with a rubber band around it, the rubber long since fused to the cover, and a cigar box.
We don't know what any of it means. He never talked about the years he spent on the road. We only knew he'd been a photographer once, before he taught chemistry.
She said that last part the way people describe a previous life, before he taught chemistry. 31 years in the same classroom, she told me. He photographed the graduations every June and never charged anyone. I asked her what she wanted restored. She looked at the atlas for a moment.
Whatever he was keeping, keep it safe. That's all.
She left her number and went back out into the rain. I want to tell you what a locked desk means, because I have met a few of them in this work. People lock desks against 2 things, other people and themselves. Against other people, they lock money and letters and the ordinary evidence of ordinary secrets. Against themselves, they lock the things they cannot bear to see and cannot bear to lose, the things that would undo them a little every time if they lived out in the open on a shelf. Money gets spent, ordinary secrets get confessed, or die quietly of old age. But a desk that stays locked for decades, in a house where nothing else is locked at all, a desk whose key is taped in the first place anyone would look, as if the lock were never meant to defeat anyone, only to delay them, that is not a lock, that is a request. Not yet, not while I'm here, but someday, yes, someone, please. I have learned to take those requests seriously. So before I touched anything, I photographed the box exactly as she had packed it, the atlas resting on the notebook, the cigar box wedged in the corner, the whole small kingdom of a man's silence arranged in cardboard. Then I began. I opened the cover that evening under the lamp, and that is when I stopped breathing for a moment, because sewn to the inside of the front cover, with coarse black thread and stitches that were not skilled but were absolutely determined, was a folded road map. Not hidden, displayed, the way you sew a medal to a uniform. Someone had wanted this map to be the first thing a person saw. Someone had decided, with a needle and thread and no talent for either, that this piece of paper and this atlas would never be separated again. I unfolded it one panel at a time. Kansas, Nebraska, the empty middle of the country, the roads like veins on the back of an old hand, and running through them, town after town after town, the blue line and the red line. Along both lines, in handwriting so small I needed the loop, there were dates, June 3rd, June 4th, June 6th, the same dates on both lines, town after town. Two travelers, the same summer, the same roads, the same days. And here is the detail that kept me at the table past midnight. Both lines were drawn by the same hand. Whoever made this map wasn't recording his own journey. He was recording two, his and someone else's. And there is only one kind of person who maps another person's movements, day by day, town by town. Or so I thought. The map needed humidification before it would give up anything more. Paper that has been folded for 37 years stops thinking of itself as a sheet. It believes it is a shape. The folds had hardened into scars, and along the sharpest of them, the red ink was beginning to ghost, lifting away from the fibers in flakes finer than dust, the way a word lifts away from a memory just before you lose it. Restoration is mostly waiting, done correctly. You introduce moisture the way you introduce a difficult subject, slowly, indirectly, from across the room. The chamber does the work. The paper decides on its own schedule to remember being paper. So while the map rested and remembered, I opened the cigar box. Inside, laid side by side like soldiers, were small translucent envelopes, glassine, the kind photographers use, and inside each envelope, strips of 35mm negatives. Never printed. I could tell by the edges, no frame markings, no darkroom notations. These images had been developed once, sleeved, and then never looked at again for 37 years. I held the first strip up against the lamp. Grain elevators at dusk. A county fair, the Ferris wheel a circle of small suns. A 2-lane highway disappearing into wheat. Whoever he was, he had an extraordinary eye. The compositions were patient. Nothing in them was in a hurry. In the 9th envelope, there was no negative at all. There was a ribbon. A strip of red ribbon, maybe 8 inches long, faded to the color of an old scar, one end frayed where it had been torn rather than cut. It had been sleeved and preserved with exactly the same care as the photographs. A ribbon is not an image. You do not archive a ribbon by accident. I set it aside, under glass, and told myself the map would explain it. The map did, but not for a long time. I spent the next day in the darkroom, printing contact sheets from the negatives, carefully, archivally, the way you handle evidence. There is a particular feeling to developing images that have waited 37 years to exist. The negative has held them the whole time, patiently, in perfect faith. But until the paper goes into the bath and the picture climbs up out of the white, they are only a possibility of a summer. And then the developer does its quiet chemistry, and suddenly there is a Ferris wheel. Suddenly there is wheat. Suddenly, a morning in June of 1988 is lying in a tray of liquid in front of you, 11 presidents later, absolutely unaware that any time has passed. Whoever this man was, I thought, sheet after sheet, he did not photograph like a competitor. Competitors photograph subjects. There is an appetite in the frame. You can feel the picture being taken from the world. These were given. Every one of them had the patience of a person who believed the light owed him nothing and was being generous anyway. And on the fourth sheet, I found her. A woman at a gas station, photographed from across the road, late 20s, a camera bag on her shoulder and a paper cup of coffee in her hand, laughing at something the attendant had said. She didn't know the picture was being taken. It wasn't a stolen image, though. I have seen stolen images, and they feel like theft. This one felt like the photographs people take of a landscape they know they are seeing for the last time. She appeared twice more across all those negatives. Once at a diner counter, in profile, writing in a notebook. Once far down a dirt road at dawn, a silhouette with a tripod, small as a punctuation mark against a sky. 3 frames, out of hundreds. Whoever she was, he had rationed her. That night, I went back to the map with the loop, and I noticed what I should have noticed the first evening. The red line runs all the way to the right-hand edge of the map, to the end of the route, a city on the Missouri River, where someone had drawn a small, careful circle around the final town. The blue line doesn't get there. The blue line stops 3 towns short, mid-route, mid-nowhere, June 26th, and then nothing, as if the blue traveler had simply stepped off the edge of his own map. A pursuit that ends 3 towns before it catches anything isn't a pursuit. So what was it? The notebook told me who they were. Not gently, and not in order. Field notebooks never do. It was mostly exposure settings and weather.
8. Fog until 7. Wind from the south. Light, no good after 9.
But scattered between the apertures there were sentences, and the sentences, assembled, made a summer. In June of 1988, a newspaper, a serious one, the kind that could change a life, held a competition. 1 staff photographer position. The assignment? 6 weeks on the back roads of the American interior. The 2 finalists would drive the same published route, file their photographs each week, and at the end, one of them would be hired. 2 finalists, a man and a woman, the blue line and the red line. You have to understand what a staff position meant in 1988 in that world. It was not a job. It was a citizenship. Health insurance, a darkroom you didn't pay for, an editor who answered your calls. For a freelancer, and they were both freelancers, both living wedding to wedding, portrait to portrait, a staff position was the difference between photography being your life and photography being your hobby that was slowly bankrupting you. 6 weeks, 1 route, 2 cars. The notebook mentions her for the first time on June 9th, and it is 2 words long.
Cedar Falls.
That's all. But it sits beside the diner photograph in my mind now, and the pencil on the back of that photograph, Iris, Cedar Falls, June 9th, is soft in a way his handwriting is soft nowhere else in the entire notebook. They knew each other, is the thing. Not well, the route kept them hours apart by design. But the same route means the same diners, the same gas stations, the same motels with the same buzzing signs. Twice, maybe 3 times that summer, the blue line and the red line sat at the same counter. 2 rivals with cameras in their cars and 1 future between them, talking. About what? Apertures, weather, the waitress's opinion of the pie. He rationed her to 3 photographs. But a man does not fold and unfold a letter until the creases go soft as cloth over someone he spoke to 3 times about pie. Some people we meet for one summer, sideways, at a counter, and they move into us anyway and pay no rent and stay for the rest of our lives. His name was on the inside cover of the notebook, in the same small handwriting as the dates on the map. Everett. Hers I found on the back of the diner photograph, written in pencil with a gentleness that the pencil could not quite disguise. Iris, Cedar Falls, June 9th. So the map was not a pursuit. It was a race. 2 photographers on the same route, hours apart, competing for the same single future. He had drawn both lines because he was tracking the race itself, her progress and his, the way a chess player records both sides of the board. That was my new theory, and it was clean, and it survived for exactly one more evening. Because a race has a logic. In a race, you protect your advantages. And when I laid the dates out side by side, town by town, the logic broke. The blue line was always first. Every town, every single day of that summer, Everett arrived hours ahead of her, at 4 in the morning, at 5, and left again before she came through. You cannot pursue someone from in front, and you do not win a race by finishing your lap before your rival wakes up and then waiting. What was he doing in those towns, alone, in the dark, hours before her? The answer began with a photograph I recognized. You have seen it too. If you were alive in the late 80s, it ran everywhere. A white country church standing in a flooded field at dawn, the water so still that the church exists twice, once in the world and once in the reflection, and a single beam of early light cutting the fog exactly between the 2 steeples, the real one and the drowned one. It won every award that mattered that year. It made a career. It hangs in collections. It was taken by a young photographer named Iris on the morning of June 24th, 1988, at 6:52 in the morning. I know the time because it is famous, and I know something now that nobody else knows. In envelope 14 of a cigar box that spent 37 years inside a locked desk in a chemistry teacher's house, there is a negative of the same church, the same flood, the same fog, taken at 6:41 that morning, 11 minutes earlier, by Everett. 11 minutes ahead of the most celebrated photograph of the year, and he never printed it, never entered it, never told a living soul. 2 days later, the blue line stops. I needed to understand those 11 minutes, and the notebook was waiting to explain them to me. Folded into the back of the field notebook, behind the last page, there was a piece of paper that was not his. Different paper, different hand. A woman's handwriting, fast and pressed hard. The writing of someone who decided to say a thing before she could decide not to.
I know you're ahead of me. I don't know how you're always ahead of me. I've stopped trying to figure it out. There is more depending on this job than I know how to explain. More than a career. That's the whole truth of my life right now, and it's all I can say without saying too much. I'm not asking you for anything, Everett. You've earned every mile of your lead. I just needed to say it out loud, once, to the only other person on this road.
No date, but the paper had been folded and unfolded so many times that the creases had gone soft as cloth. He had read this letter over and over. I went back through the notebook with new eyes, looking for the moment it arrived in his life, and I found it, not in anything he wrote, but in what he stopped writing. Before the middle of June, the entries keep score.
Filed 6 frames. Editor liked the fairgrounds. She filed the storm, strong, but she was late to it.
The ordinary arithmetic of a man who is ahead and knows it. And then, around June 12th, the scorekeeping simply ends. No announcement, no underlined resolution. The competition just quietly disappears from the pages of the man who was winning it, the way a name disappears from conversation after a funeral. After June 12th, the notebook stops asking who is ahead and begins asking a completely different question. The question that would fill every remaining page. What will the light do tomorrow, and where does she need to be standing when it does it? Somewhere in those readings, between a diner in Cedar Falls and a flooded field with a church in it, a man who was winning made a decision that no one would ever see him make. He never wrote the decision down. Decisions like that aren't written down. They are only ever carried out. The ribbon was still under glass at the corner of my table. Red. Torn, not cut. I hadn't understood it yet, but I had begun by then to be afraid of understanding it, the way you are afraid of finishing a book you don't want to end. Here is what the notebook actually was. It was not a photographer's log. It was a study of light, conducted at dawn, alone, in secret, for another person's benefit. The entries, once I knew what I was reading, were unmistakable.
June 14th. Light comes 2 minutes earlier than yesterday. The good window is 6:40 to 6:55, no later.
June 17th. The fog held longer than I expected. She'll have maybe 90 seconds of it when she comes through. It's enough. June 19th. Tied the ribbon low on the fence post, left of the gate. She'll find the line. She won't find the reason.
June 21st. 3rd week. She's getting faster. Reads the sky better than I do now. Soon she won't need me at all.
He arrived in every town in the dark. He stood in the cold and watched the sun come up and timed it. He tested the angles. He found the one place in each landscape where the morning did something impossible. And then he marked it quietly, in ways only another photographer would notice. A ribbon on a fence post. A pull-off with fresh tire tracks. A gate left open exactly wide enough to frame a steeple. And then he drove on before she arrived so that every discovery of that summer would be hers. I printed the church negative that night, full frame, no cropping, and there, at the far left edge of Everett's 641 photograph, on a low branch beside the flooded fence line, exactly where a photographer walking up from the road would pass, is a small strip of red ribbon. In Iris's famous photograph, taken 11 minutes later, the frame is tighter. The ribbon is just outside it. She stood where the ribbon told her to stand. She never knew the ribbon had a name. The strip in my glassine envelope is torn at one end, because on his way out of that field in the dark, Everett took it back. Took back the only physical evidence that the most celebrated photograph of 1988 had been prepared, like a table is prepared, by someone who then left before dinner. He kept the ribbon for 37 years. Some people keep medals. Let me put you in that field, because I have stood in it in my mind 100 times now. It is 4:50 in the morning on June 24th, 1988. And it is cold the way June is only cold before the sun has any opinions. A man parks a quarter-mile up the road so his headlights won't cross the water. He walks the fence line in the dark. The flood is a week old. Almost nobody has thought of the church as anything but a misfortune. He has been here twice already. He knows the sun clears the tree line at 6:38, and that for 14 minutes after, the light will come in low and split the fog between the steeple and its reflection, and the whole drowned landscape will become, briefly, an altar. He ties the ribbon low on the branch, left of the gate, because she shoots from the left. He has learned that about her. At 6:41, he raises his own camera and takes one frame. One. I believe, and I will believe it for the rest of my life, that he took that photograph for the same reason you whisper, "Look," to someone standing next to you in front of something beautiful, even when there is no one standing next to you at all. Then he walks back along the fence line and drives out of the county. At 6:52, 11 minutes later, a young woman carrying more than a camera walks up from the road, sees a strip of red on a branch exactly where her eye was already going, stops, breathes, and takes the photograph of her life. Luck. She will think luck for 37 years. The last entry in the notebook is dated June 26th, the day the blue line stops.
Called the paper this morning. Told them I'm withdrawing. The editor asked if something had happened to me out here. I said yes. One of us needs this. The other one only wanted it. That's not the same thing. And a man who can't tell the difference shouldn't be trusted with a camera anyway. The light out here will keep rising without me. That's the good thing about light.
He drove home. He became a chemistry teacher. He photographed graduations every June for 31 years and never charged anyone. I looked her up. Of course I did. Iris got the job. Iris became, well, you've seen her photographs even if you don't know it. Magazine covers, 2 wars, a retrospective a few years ago in a museum with marble stairs. In an interview she gave once, she said something that stopped me cold.
That summer made me. I've never had luck like that summer again. It was like the light was waiting for me.
And then, in an older profile from the 90s, buried in the 3rd paragraph, I found the thing the letter would not say. A sister, younger, sick through that whole decade, with the kind of illness that is survivable exactly as long as the money doesn't run out. There is more depending on this job than I know how to explain. It had a face the whole time. It had a name Iris wouldn't put on paper, in a note to a rival, on a road in 1988, because some weights we can carry, but not out loud. The sister is still alive. The medicine worked. The whole life that grew out of that June worked. And here's the part I keep returning to. Everett never knew. The letter never told him what was depending. He read one vague sentence, folded soft as cloth, and decided it was enough. He gave up the future he wanted for a weight he was never even shown. Some people need to see the whole ledger before they'll give. He only needed to know that the ledger existed. And Everett watched all of it from a chemistry classroom, in silence, for the rest of his life. And the only testimony he ever gave was a map sewn to the inside of an atlas with coarse black thread, locked in a desk, with the key taped in the first place anyone would look.
I think he wanted it found eventually.
His niece said, I think so too. Here is what the map finally taught me about him, the thing I will keep after the atlas has gone home. Everett's kindness was not a moment. Moments are easy. Anyone can be moved once, at a church in a flooded field, and do one generous thing in the emotional weather of a single morning. What the notebook records is something rarer and much harder. He got up at 4 the next morning and did it again, and the morning after that. Town after town, for 2 more weeks, long after the feeling that started it must have settled into something ordinary, through rain, through bad light, through mornings when the fog didn't hold and the whole day's work marked nothing. His generosity had a routine. It had exposure settings. It kept better records than most people keep of their own achievements. We are taught that sacrifice is dramatic, a single blazing gesture, witnessed, remembered. His had the shape of a discipline, practiced daily, witnessed by no one. And I think that is why he could carry it in silence for the rest of his life without bitterness. The graduations, the free portraits, 31 Junes of other people's beginnings. A man who resents a sacrifice has usually made only one. A man who makes one every morning stops calling it sacrifice at all. He called it reading light, but not corrected, not announced, not repaid, just found, just known, by someone, someday, the way a stone at the bottom of a river is known by the water. So here is what I did, and did not do. I did not call the museum. I did not write to Iris. Her photograph is not a lie. She stood in the cold too. She pressed the shutter. She saw what she saw. Whatever it gave her was not the picture. It was the chance, and a chance, once taken, belongs entirely to the person who took it. He understood that better than anyone. It's why he tore the ribbon down. Some restorations return a story to the world. This one, I return to the silence it was built from. I cleaned the map, panel by panel. I stabilized the red ink where it had begun to ghost. The red line will outlive us all now. I did not remove the stitching. I reinforced it, stitch by clumsy stitch, with thread the same coarse black as his, because the stitching is not damage. The stitching is the testimony. When the niece came back, I put the atlas in her hands and told her the only sentence of the whole story that was mine to give. Your uncle knew how to read light.
That sounds like him, whoever he was.
And she carried it back out into the weather. The negatives are sleeved in archival glassine. The notebook is boxed. The ribbon lies where he kept it, beside the map that will never be separated from its atlas. Everything goes back to the shelf now. Everything returns to silence. All of us walk on roads that someone prepared before we got there, quietly, at an hour when we were still asleep. Most of those people will never know how much they changed our lives, and most of us will never know their names.